just going to have to live with knowing that. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the quote we're doing is from page 16, and it's from Flexion, and we're doing the remembers herself running back over the paddocks, looking down distractedly in the ambulance later to notice the dried blood on her feet, which Morgan has so wonderfully pointed out is about love, and it's about that she has realised actually she does love Frank, even though she was hoping that he died earlier. Despite wanting him to die, she actually does love him, which is, sweet in its own kind of way. And I think it does another thing that Kate Kennedy really banged on a lot, which is that show, don't tell.
Yeah.
You know, so any piece that you write, to make a connection with this piece, you could use that show, don't tell thing. And say, you know, when you do your explanatory statement later, you can say, I'm representing this quote not just in this idea that she actually loves Frank, that she has this realisation, but I'm also including this quote because I'm doing the show, don't tell thing. So instead of telling the realisation, oh, I loved him, I always loved him, blah, 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 my character is going to show their love and not tell it. Does that make sense? So that would be two ways that you could really connect nicely. Yes, Miss Smith.
It's very interesting how I that, so I just banged on my 5th period class.
Oh, good.
When she describes Frank about that, she doesn't say, I loathe him, I want him dead. She goes with like his criticising tone, his ordering what to do. So she puts
again,
all
she
these
shows
together,
she doesn't
in
tell.
rapid fire, and you're building this character analysis of Frank as this ordering, control, power freak kind of dictator.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but then this is all about realisation, and that she's switched on and she's gone, oh, shit, I actually do love this guy. Yeah. So I guess the other thing that I would pull from it is realisation. You know? And if you wrote something that kind of had a realisation, that would tie in really nicely to it too. What else do you kind of see from it? What else is it about? Yeah.
Could you sort of like speak about like the imagery of blood on her feet as opposed to blood on her hands, which she might have had before in a sense because she was
wishing him to be
exactly,
dead.
Yeah. And then like it like signifies like a transition in her mindset and like how she's how she's now
Okay,
affected.
so a transition in mindset. I like that idea. Yeah. Because it really is, isn't it? It's even more than a transition. It's like a transformation that she's going from loathing a man to loving him. Yeah. Transition, transformation.
There's no middle ground, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that idea, like, you might want to kill somebody, that's your private thought, but actually going and doing it. So all this I hate, I hate, when it comes to the crunch, I don't actually hate you, it's just things going in my head.
Yeah, and I don't think she's ever in the mindset that she hates him so much that she'd kill him, but she hates him so much that she wishes that he would die.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really interesting as well because she's such a passive creature, isn't she?
Yeah.
You know, she's so passive, so...
She's quiet, is a quote.
Yeah, the quiet one.
Yeah, the quiet one.
And I think it would make her life easier. She could move to a smaller place, less
She could
work.
just leave him.
And she could actually have a voice. And the only time she's got a voice is when she can say thank you.
Yeah.
With the casseroles.
Yeah.
Geez, I'm Gabby tonight, aren't I?
Yeah, she's the quiet one. And she's nameless too, which again increases her passivity. You know, she's super passive. No name. And even that, like, so when he is going to die, she's like, oh, I'm finally free of him. Like, she's trapped. Like, you can get a divorce. I think it was in your class where someone said, oh, why don't you just get a divorce? Oh, yeah, why don't you just leave him? Because that's not her nature, is it? Her nature is to be passive. Like, she never bites back at him.
But she doesn't have a job. She's
No,
trapped.
she's got nothing. She's trapped.
Let's go. She's got nothing.
Yeah. Never fights back. Okay, so we've got this super passive creature, right? Is this a passive act? No, it's not passive, it's super active. She's choosing, because like, if she wanted him to die so much, you don't have to run, do ya? You don't have to run. No one's going to see you. He's dying, so he's not going to know that you didn't run. You know, she could have let him die, but she doesn't. So actually, someone who is really passive does a very active decision. Yeah.
So you could relate it to like the measures they go to for like who they love.
Yeah. Yeah. The lengths that people go to, yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't have to be necessarily love like romantic love, does it? And in fact, there's very little kind of romance going on here. You know, I think they're a long way before you could say that their relationship is romantic. You know, just because they hold hands once, I feel like that might be pushing the friendship to say romance. But you could talk about other types of love, couldn't you? What other love would you do this for? Who would do this? Who would actually find themselves in a situation like this, that they saw that somebody that they loved, good, a mother for a child, definitely. I don't have kids, I've got dogs, but like, seriously, I would do anything for my dogs. No, I'm not even kidding. Like my dog, I had a dog who passed away, and it was like the most heartbreaking experience of my life. But she died, and before she died, she had leukemia, and my dog had $37,000 worth of chemotherapy before she died. 2 years worth of chemotherapy every single week. Because I was just like, and I drove across town, so I was working in Kilmore, and I drove to Box Hill every week for 2 years straight, because I was like, this dog is my everything. Like, and so I can't imagine what I would do for a kid. Like, I would have no bounds. Like,
I'll be really honest, I've got a child and I've got a husband, and sometimes I feel trapped.
Yeah.
And I want to get out of here. And sometimes I get so mad that it doesn't mean I want to kill my family or I want to leave my family. It just means that...
What a relief.
These are things that you usually keep private. The things, the most intimate details of a person's thoughts. And to put them on paper, when you express them verbally, when I say, I feel trapped, you think, oh my God, I'm a
bad person.
But these a million of these thoughts go through somebody's head every day. But to actually put them on paper and then pull them apart and act upon them is another thing.
Yeah,
so,
I think,
But like, with Polly, could you see yourself in a situation like this? If Polly was like in a life or death situation, could you see this?
Life.
Yeah.
I would exchange.
Yeah, in a heartbeat. You would cut your feet up and not even notice.
Yeah.
Like, because that's not important.
on the point of those thoughts, like, would you say like the difference is like those are spontaneous rather than premeditated,
Yes,
and that's why
big difference, because she hasn't stewed around ways that she could kill her partner.
No,
exactly.
She's just like, if it did happen,
exactly.
This is what I would do.
yeah, if it did happen, I'd be okay. Yeah.
And then she's actually, no one pays her attention, and the way she sees herself and thinking of herself is the first time she's ever had a pre-cooked meal, someone cook a meal for her.
Yeah, in the hospital, and she's like, oh, it's really nice, it's like being on holiday. And it's like, have you ever had hospital food? It's terrible.
And the whole thing about like her thinking, my greatest freedom is to live by myself in a small apartment with no one ordering me around. Hey, my husband's sick, I could achieve that if he died. It's not like I want him to die. It'd be like, wow, it would make it less complications.
If he did, I'm not saying I'd be super dead.
No.
That's kind of the premise. Okay, so we've pulled out some really good things just from that quote. Okay, we've got some really nice things. You could keep going. I like the idea that Ricardo had about the dried blood, and maybe taking that on as like a bit of a symbol or like a motif. you know, and again, that would be really good because it would be referring back to the prompt and going, well, I know that Kate Kennedy loves symbolism. She loves a symbol. She loves a motif. So I'm going to take this, the dried blood, and I'm going to then further that in my own story, in my own idea. Okay? And I think that would be really, really good, and it would be, again, a bit of a high-level response that we would go, yes, okay, you've really got it from several levels. You've got the idea of the dried blood and how she's using it as a symbol, and then you're kind of taking that symbol and morphing it into your own, which is then very clever. Okay? So, heaps of good stuff. Now, what the hell could we do with it? Actually, Lise, do you want to take a photo of that?
Yes,
and then I just want to rub out the stuff around it and then work out some things that we could do with it. Although I don't have an eraser, so hey.
I'll go get you one.
I think like it's something
Yeah,
else. It's like
I've got a candle.
that'll help.
Not super successful. All good.
No, just a big hang on.
Oh, I'll use tissues. I'll just use
Just hang on.
tissues.
Just going to make sure. Got it all.
Excellent. Okay.
And I'll pop them up there.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Now you're going to have to remember all these things that we wrote because I clearly don't have them now, so I'm going to have to refer back to you.
I
All
will
right.
pop them up on the news.
Oh yeah, even just email it to me,
Yeah,
and then I'll
that's
attach it
right,
to
yeah.
the YouTube clip too.
I'm recording.
Yes,
Oh.
we're recording then.
Hello.
Okay, so there's several ways that you can actually do this sack, and it really depends on what you would feel most comfortable with. So the first way is to take directly from the story, right? So you can take from the story. Okay, so you could base yourself in flexion. You could take flexion and go, okay, I'm going to write in flexion, and I'm going to take the ideas that we wrote about, like realization, like, the idea of the dried blood, about the transformation of idea. I could take all of that, and I could write in the story. How could I do that? What is in the story that still represents all those ideas but isn't told yet? Because the big trick about taking from the story, it can't have been heard yet.
Would that be like from like the husband's perspective or something?
Good, Morgan. And this is why I like having Morgan around.
Could you do it, just to throw a thing into the fire, just throw your thoughts around, could you do it from a member in the community, seeing it does have a bit of third person in it?
Definitely.
Yeah,
Let's-
especially since they visit her.
Yeah, they visit her, they come, someone dropping off a casserole. And a
Definitely.
conversation that ensues. Is that, yep.
Yeah. I'm just going to
Like
stick
the-
with Frank first, but I'll
Yeah,
write like,
yeah.
what would you say?
Hmm?
Casserole person?
The casserole.
Casserole. Townsperson.
Yeah, the
Casserole lady.
townsperson. The lady in the cafe who drops off a casserole.
Casserole person.
Can we just write casserole?
Casserole person.
Yeah.
Townsperson.
Her name's Casserole.
Yeah, maybe. Casserole.
Casserole.
Cassandra roll. Alright, let's start with Frank and look at the kinds of things we could do with Frank. Okay, so the other thing that we need to also think about is the forms that this could come in. Because yes, you can write a short story. And obviously a short story is an easy bet because you're already working in the same form that Kate Kennedy is already working in. So you could do a short story. So think back to Crucible. What were some of the other forms that you could write in? What did you do last year when you did Crucible? What other forms did you do? You could do a monologue. Good. Everyone remember what a monologue is? A log that's by itself? Yes, a log that's by itself. Any ideas? Monologue. Meg, come on.
Don't do letters.
And don't do diaries.
Wait. What's a monologue?
Because no one
It
can do
is,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, not people talking.
Person.
person talking. Yeah, it's one person kind of thinking out loud. You know, like if you were an actor in a play and you had a monologue, what would happen is everything would go dark and then a spotlight would come down and you would step into it and talk. Okay? And basically talk to the audience. Right? That would be a very stereotypical, terrible drama solo, but that's basically what it would be. Okay? You talking to the audience about your deepest, darkest thoughts. Okay? Things that you wouldn't necessarily say to another person. What else could you do? Yep.
Dialogue.
A dialogue, yep. Which obviously means two or more people talking to each other.
You could do both.
You could do both.
That's right. How have you been? And then her.
Yeah, definitely. So you could have a monologue and a dialogue actually in the same thing. So you could have like a moment where Frank talks by himself and then maybe someone knocks on the door. And then he has to have a brief exchange. And let's be honest, if it was Frank, it's going to be brief. The man is not a talker. So a dialogue. What else could you do? I don't think letters are that bad, but I don't think Frank is a big letter writer.
No.
But they are an option to choose. And when I say letter, I mean, remember this is the 21st century, nobody writes letters anymore. What do?
Email.
They send an email. They send texts. You could even do like a
text
whole, like if you were doing, look, Frank, I would not say is a big texter.
We know she has an overall.
I get the sense. Yeah, but she is. So you could even have like a text dialogue. That would be really, really interesting.
Couldn't you have like a dialogue between like two of the town's members or something like that?
Definitely. Okay, a letter, an email, a text. Journal, I think you would have to really pick your bits. Yeah, and I think Frank, no journals. The man is not a journaler. He's not sitting up at night writing a dear diary. And I feel like with journals, you've got to be careful in terms of turning it into something that's a bit like, a bit daggy, bit naff. But I think with the right character, and I think maybe she might be a journal kind of gal, but if you were going to write a journal, you really want to rehearse it to make sure that it wasn't naffy. Luckily, you get 72 hours. Okay? So, a journal is an option. Let's put it as an option. Yes, my darling?
In that time, can we get teachers to read drafts?
No. We are a black zone. All teachers at Mary Mead are a black zone. Okay? For those 3 days, you cannot touch us.
And are the prompts just quotes?
Pardon?
Are the prompts that we have are just
Yes.
quotes? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a quote. So you can actually choose what to do with it. Because I think that gives you the most room.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of interpret and stretch. Yep.
What are these 72 hours? It wouldn't be.
Oh, wow. Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. So we're going to give you a quote and we're going to give you 72 hours to stew on it. So we're going to send it out via email and go, this is your prompts. You're going to get 2 and you can choose which one you want. And then you can choose what you can do with it. You can talk to each other. That's fine, but you can't touch us. Because obviously, we don't want people turning up and going, oh, this is what I'm going to write for the SAC.
Yeah.
And then us proofing it and you just coming out and spewing it. And then everybody gets an A. That kind of kills my bell curve. So I'm not going to let that happen. But that's kind of, because we think it's a bit unfair to force you to be creative on the drop of a dime. It is very hard to be creative, just here it is, here's my thing. And because this isn't on the exam in terms of a creative, we kind of thought, well, we can have a little bit more room to move. But you can't bring anything in. So you've got to just come up with something, write it at home. I would be rewriting it, polishing it, rewrite, polish, memorize, and then as best as you can, vomit it up whole. The best version that you can.
May I question.
That being said, my dog did vomit up a whole instruction booklet on Sunday. So,
An instruction booklet for what?
taking Voltaren. She took a packet of Voltaren
Can I,
and swallowed the instructions.
can I ask a question, just to clarify? With the quote, right, is it from that point forward? Or you can put it anywhere?
You can do whatever you want
So
with it.
If it's clearly a quote, this is just me getting tended. If
Yeah.
it's clearly a quote for flexion,
Yeah.
you couldn't use that in another story?
Yeah.
Oh, you could, okay.
You
Yep.
can. You can do whatever the hell you want with it, as long as it connects.
Connects.
Yeah. So I was going to say, let's take from the story. Let's be frank. Let's be frank.
Let's be frank. Let's be frank.
I think that name is not supposed to be without irony either. Like I think his name is Frank for a very good reason,
I think so
because
too.
he is incredibly frank,
Open,
isn't
frank,
he?
yeah.
He is not hiding any of his disdain from others. Okay, so you can play with that irony too. You might use, earnest, and have a completely, lovely, earnest person. So let's have a look at this. What would Frank do? How could we incorporate Frank into that quote, or take it from his perspective?
I don't know if this is right, but we could do like a monologue from just the moment after he gets into the accident.
Yeah.
The moment in which he realises that he doesn't want to be a burden on his wife, because
Which is his
that
realisation.
His realisation.
Maybe he has that realisation. To take it one step further, he realises how shitty of a husband he's been, and that if he does pull through this, he wants to change that. And if he doesn't, then giving her, that 10 minutes, that's his gift. Do you know what I mean? Like, so maybe you could have that, his kind of epiphany, and that's why he goes, I could die now. That's what I could give you. And it's that same realisation, that he has this realisation that he loves her, and that he's been a shit husband, and that this is what he can do to make up for it, is to not let her see him die.
Should we even take it back further?
That would be
to
great.
The conversation in the car about the unborn child. 'Cause that
Yeah.
stops the communication, and he actually thinks back to that. Yeah. And probably hopes that she doesn't drive him to the hospital so far away. But yeah, that whole, can you bring it back to that whole metaphor of the strongbox?
Yeah.
He's kept everything locked inside. But what at the moment he realises he has to cede control to his wife, and that she has now got a voice. And that could be with a lot of anger. It could be that with anger, because he's used to being in control, and he has to deal with that no longer is he in control. He has no control. That could be interesting. I always like to think in that story that she becomes this benevolent dictator and chains him to his bed and because she's the one that puts his hand on the heart. So
Yeah.
and the flexion. So you think that the more exercise he gets, they're doing it together because the two of the elbows are together. That you think the more exercise and the better he gets, the more the relationship will increase. Then I hope that she just takes his revenge, misery.
Yeah.
Just takes total revenge.
Well, I don't think she does though, because
No,
that's
no.
the whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That she
Oh, why
realises
she
that
is.
she actually loves him. Okay, so a monologue of realisation that he loves her, and says that he's going to give her the death. That would be really, really beautiful and a really good connection, because it's that same. It's both about love, both about realisation, both about that kind of moment of crisis and then learning something from it. But I also like the idea of using another bit in it that's kind of, I guess, less expected, which is the miscarriage thing, and maybe doing a realisation from the miscarriage.
Did you get this feeling that at one stage they were deeply in love?
Yeah.
You get this feeling just from her, the tenderness of that last touch. And you get the feeling that once upon a time they were in love. It wasn't just a marriage for convenience. And the whole idea that this marriage is unfortunately broken down because his way of dealing with grief is just to shut down. And he knows no other way than just to shut down. He doesn't even bother when his wife speaks to him to look. This whole idea that this is a man who is totally shut down. And he doesn't communicate. He is frank, shut down, a closed thing. And now he's realising by ceding control, he's letting his grief out. And he's letting his sorrow for the unborn child out. And the only way he knows how to grieve is to shut. It's just.
Yeah, I like that. A realization could be like the monologue of grief after the miscarriage, and they're sitting in the car together, driving, and he realizes that it's always going to only be the two of them now. That they tried so hard to have this baby, and then they've miscarried, and he's like, I've realised that it's only ever going to be the two of us now, and I always pictured myself as a father, and it's never going to happen, and it's this monologue of grief instead, which is interesting because it's just a little bit different.
Oh, I've got an idea. Or you could actually have a show don't tell of his whole body shutting down and what a body shutting down looks like.
Yeah.
And him internally, as his internal grief takes over, the eyes shut, the head turns, the body tenses. That could be very interesting.
And then using that metaphor that she uses about him turning to stone.
Yeah, and unbending.
Yeah. How that he's even stopped kind of turning his head. Yeah. Okay. Anything else we could do with Frank?
Or when him attempting to take his first steps after the accident, and then it's he's like you said, he's slowly debilitated, and then
and how are we tying it to this?
and
how's it tying to realization?
He's 45.
No, because he realizes how he's failed in life. He doesn't have a child, and now he's no longer the breadwinner of his family. He's a dependent.
a realization of failure.
Realization, he's realized that maybe his definition of succeeding in life and everything is changed. And then there's that transformation.
Yeah, imagine the grumpiness coming out. He would have taken all of that out in the physios, poor old physios.
Yeah, and she actually says that she needs to send them a gift because they're so patient with him, and he's a pain in the ass.
But I like the idea of the monologue, what Miss Richardson was saying, because with that monologue, if you listen to the Kate Kennedy talk, she goes into saying she's very interested in the minute after the event. So that it could be the event could be he has to cede power to his wife or control of his wife. So what happens in that minute after? What is he thinking? What is he expressing? So that could be that sort of internal monologue of his having to cede power. And that's very interesting. I think that's what she said.
Yeah.
That absolutely fascinates me.
And I think this would be a good one as well, because she talks about how, and it's very clear that she's very interested in this idea of masculinity and men, and how men see themselves and how men value themselves. Because having him cry is obviously her trying to twist those boundaries about masculinity and men. And having the most kind of stoic, emotionally cold man break down and cry, she's trying to stretch those boundaries of masculinity, which then ties into Kate Kennedy. Sorry. Yes?
But just on that, could we be able to do a monologue or a short story about the slow process of him actually breaking down to the point when he actually opens up to his wife?
Yeah.
Or you could do a whole different short story about the slow disintegration of a relationship, but you could do it from the point that it was over and work backwards. That would be interesting.
Could you say
definitely.
As he disintegrates, he
That's
no, I know.
The metaphor is that you have to find a metaphor that runs through and show a disintegration of a relationship going back to front without saying, hey, this is a relationship that's disintegrating. Let me tell you, start at the end and go to forward. You have to show it, and that's the difficult thing about it.
Yeah.
But as he becomes more physically debilitated, you could say that their relation strengthens in a way.
Definitely.
And it's because the more he becomes dependent.
You're talking about this one, I was talking about a total.
Oh, wait, really?
If I was in year 12, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
A whole different story.
Yeah. So, but these are all options, and particularly if you're somebody who doesn't feel that creative writing is your strength, and that creating a whole new story is something that's very daunting for you, then stick to what you know. You know these stories, you know these characters. If you feel comfortable in that setting, and you feel like that's going to be the easiest way for you to link the quote and the ideas in the quote to whatever you're writing, do that. Because this will score just as well. If you do a good job of it, it's going to score just as well. There's no kind of penalty for lack of creativity. Okay?
The most difficult thing I think with that is voice.
Yeah, and making sure that you say something that isn't already shown. Because a lot of people, with the holiday homework, I noticed, tried to take it from the story, and basically they just ended up rewriting the story. So what you need to do is, like we've done, is pick something that isn't actually told yet. Because if you just tell the story from a different perspective, you're not adding anything. You're just doing a crappier job than Kate Kennedy at writing her story. Because let's be honest, you're not going to write as well as Kate Kennedy. Just saying. No offence. Okay, so does that make sense in terms of taking from the story? And you can take from anyone in the story. You could take one of these casserole ladies and write her perspective. And maybe she's always watched the wife and gone, that must be a really lonely woman.
Yeah.
Maybe she's, and have her have her own realisation, maybe about that situation, or maybe about her own situation. That would be totally fine. Okay, but let's take it from another perspective and go, okay, let's take it from outside of the story. The other thing, I'm
taking it for you.
You're right. The other thing that I would just say is that you don't have to just take it from this story. You could take it from one of our other stories that have similar kind of ideas. So what other stories could we link this quote to? These ideas in this quote to? Who else has realisation? Who else has, realises that they're willing to sacrifice anything for the person that they love? Cross country?
She has like the bit where she's like obsessed, like she gets a bit obsessed with
Yeah, obsessive love.
and then she's like, oh wait, I'm looking at a 14-year-old.
Yeah. I think that might be harder because it's not reciprocated and things like that.
And
But I think you could
questions
do
that she
it.
loves
Yeah, I think you could do it. Yeah.
I mean, $5 families, it's a different type of love, but she's like,
She would sacrifice anything for Jason, and I think not for the partner, but for that child, she is willing to lower herself just so that that child can see that he was once loved by a father.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think
You know what I would make a really good link is maybe, because you know how like we don't know what happens in terms of her getting picked up and leaving the hospital and stuff like that. Maybe Des never turns up. Des's mum never turns up, and so she's stranded, right? And the nurses are like, well, if you've got nowhere to go home and you've got no ability to get this kid home, maybe we need to call DHS because maybe you can't look after this baby. Department of Human Services, so like foster care. And she sees some sort of threat of him being taken away from her. And we create a situation for her that she's going to be taken away from this baby. And that would have that same realisation, that she has this realisation that she's like, I'm going to do anything I can to hold on to this baby. Does that make sense? So that would be a kind of a really good connection. Okay, so $5 family. What else we got? Yep. Yeah. Because it's the same concept, isn't it? Yeah. Cake. Definitely.
And almost.
And because she will literally do anything for that kid. And she makes that very clear, doesn't she? So you could take that same kind of self-sacrificing love from that story and use it and represent it in Kate. Yeah.
Not so much royal cool, because she's sort of more narcissistic, isn't she?
Yeah.
Just trying to be.
I think those are probably I would say your best ones. Oh, obviously 72 Derwents as well.
Yeah.
That the mum actually does kill for her kids. Yeah.
But that'd be different. That'd be interesting to write from a different perspective. Like,
Yeah.
you could really, if you could
Write it from the mum's perspective.
Yeah, you could write it from the mum's perspective. You could write it from Shane's perspective.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. You could write it from a DES perspective. You could write it from a
Yeah.
teacher's.
You know what would be really cool even if, so like after something like that happens, obviously the police get involved, obviously. Could you write the police report? Look up what a police report looks like you know, how it's structured, write it up like a police report.
The only thing is,
And for self-defense. That could totally work.
Yeah, just to get the prompt to fit that.
Well, that's self-sacrificing
Yeah,
love.
self-sacrificing
It's
love,
self-sacrificing love, so it still kind of fits. I think that would work really, really cool, and it would be really interesting in terms of the form. It would definitely make you kind of stand out. You've done something very different. Okay, so does that make sense about so option 1, take from the story. Option 2, take from another story. Okay? Option 3 will probably be the most popular, I think, just because it seems like kids are already moving in that direction. But it doesn't mean it's the only direction you can move in. So don't feel like, oh, well, I'm going to write inside, so I'm not going to be as good. That's not the case at all. In fact, I think it's probably like a very good option for those who are not creative writers, who are like, look, I can essay, fine, but get me to come up with something new, I'm not into it. So it might be an excellent option for those kinds of people, and I totally understand.
Self-sacrificing life, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Thank you.
No worries. I like it when people have that love for me. I don't particularly like having that love for other
I'm
people.
just thinking of the Bible story.
And I have it for very few people. You know, it's like how I was telling you guys, remember at like the start of the year, and I was like, right, you cost 10 grand a year to come to this school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there is very few living creatures on this earth I would give $10,000 a year for. Very
So I'd get a
few.
second job to put, if my daughter
Yeah.
is really, really bright,
Yeah.
to put her through a school.
Yeah. See, I don't have kids. I don't have that problem.
But you would take your
I
dog
keep
to
going
the
on
best-
holidays.
You would get a second job to put your dog
Yeah.
to a veterinarian.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't have to. I had insurance. But
Man, that's rude, aren't
yeah, I insured my dogs. I did. Seriously. If you have a pet and you really like them, insure them. It's like $500 a year.
You have a pet that you don't
If
like.
you don't like them, then
No, because like you know, like some people are like not super attached to their pets. They're not like pet people. They have a pet, but it's kind of like a lamp or a table. Like I don't understand those people, but I know they exist. But yeah, if you really love your pet, if you're crazy for your pet, insure them. It's like $500 a year. Totally pays off in the long run. In the long run, $37,000 worth of chemotherapy. I paid like $1,000 for it. Anyway, so what could I do with this story? Yep.
This might not be right, but you could come up with a new story about like maybe a teenage girl who comes from a broken home and she has to give up her baby because she's pregnant and for like adoption or something. And she doesn't really want to, but she knows that it's like the best thing for the baby.
Good. Giving up child, baby, not child. For adoption because it is best.
Ooh.
I think that's a really clever story. Yeah, that she doesn't necessarily want to give that child away, but she knows that, you know, she's got nothing to offer it. You know,
Yeah.
that you know, she's not going to be able to send it to the best schools. She's not going to be able to give it a stable home environment. She's not going to be able to, you know, take care of it. You know, she's only a child herself. And like you said, you know, maybe in a broken home, pulling on that idea of, you know, 72 Derwents and go, you know, maybe she has an unstable home environment and goes, there's no way I want to bring a baby into that environment. And even though it kills me, and I'll never, you know, be able to cope with it, it's the best thing for the child, and I'm willing to do that. I think that would be a great match. Fantastic match. All right, what else could we do? Self-sacrificing love. We talked about mothers would have it for children. Partners have it for one another. Who else? What else? Yep.
It's my full heartstring, but like having to like put down a pet.
Yeah, that even though you don't want to do it, yeah, definitely. that harps on another very important thing from Kate Kennedy. What is it?
Processing grief.
Well, I wasn't thinking that, but
What
yes.
was that?
What else is that? Other than, like, you know how we have our themes, what's one of the themes that would fit into? Ordinariness.
Ordinariness, yes.
Everybody goes through a time that he doesn't have.
He doesn't
And it's like,
understand
what do you
what
mean
you
by ordinariness? What do you mean by that? I'm like, it's just ordinary.
Everybody has it. Yeah, everybody goes through it. Yeah,
No one
and
knows what
everybody who
ordinary
owns a pet goes through this. The grief of having to go and put down a pet. Actually, I was at the vet on Sunday because my stupid dog ate Voltaren. That's my life. Basically, I spend more time and money at the vets than any person should. They all know me. Like, I go into the vet and they're like, "Oh, hi, Megan. Oh, who have you got today? Oh, yeah. What's she been up to? How's the other one?" So embarrassing. Anyway, I'm not sorry. But I was there at the vets the other day and this guy came in and he was a bit rough, to be honest. He was a bit of rough as guts kind of guy, and I was like, ooh, is he just here to, like, get some meds? Like, he looked a bit dicey. Anyway, he came in with, of course, like one of those, like, staffy mastiff huge creatures. Which, look, I actually love those type of dogs too. Like, I love a staffy. They're like the loveliest dogs. They got like these big smiles and they're actually really sweet. But they can also maul people. So like,
No, my stack is precious.
some of them are. Totally agree.
He's scared of me.
And it's one of those things with staffies. It's about
How they're trained.
how they're raised.
Yeah.
I totally believe it's a how you raise kind of thing. Like you raise, like, but it's the same, like I have Cocker Spaniels, right? And Cocker Spaniels are notorious biters. Like they will bite you. The only thing is Cocker Spaniels have no jaw strength. So like if my dog tried to maul you, and she does bite occasionally, she's a bit naughty, sometimes she bites because she's an anxious thing. She's on medication. I'm not even joking. My dog takes anti-anxiety medication. But she will bite you, but she can't even chew kibble. She can't even chew kibble. Like, we have to moisten it for her. She can't eat dog food. So, like, I never fear that she's going to hurt someone because she can't even chew her food. It's pathetic. But this guy came in with this mastiffy kind of thing that had been in a fight, and it was pretty mangled. It was not looking good. And he carried it in. It was huge. I think it must have been a mastiff rather than a staffy because it was just huge. Anyway, so he carries it in and he goes back outside and just like, what the hell is going on here? And he was coming in and going out and coming in and going out, and I was like, what's going on here? And he's like, he's got the dog's blood all over him, and he's looking pretty, and he's also like looking a bit wrong. Anyway, you know, that kind of like baseball cap that's like pinched, so it's like almost a full circle, and he's like got the Adidas trackies that are like overstretched, and he's looking rough. He's got like the wife beater shirt on, and he's like very suspiciously skinny. Yeah, too much beard growth. Yeah, I thought originally when he came in he was there for the medication, but he was just gonna like try and hit up for some like ketamine or something. Sure. Oh, totally. I was very sus. Anyway, no, because people go to vets for that. Seriously, it's not good. Anyway, and I was like, what is going on? He's going out for cigarettes and and the lady came out, and I was, because you know I spy on people. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And so I was listening, and the lady was like, oh, you know, we're going to have to let him go. We're going to have to let him go. Which obviously is code for we're going to put the dog down. And I was like, oh, that's actually really sad. She goes, do you want to come in and say goodbye to him and be there? And he's like, no, I can't. And I was just like, I was sitting there going, oh, honey, you've got to go in. You've got to be there. Because, like, the dog's dying. He doesn't want to die by himself. He's a dog. He wants to be with his dad. It was so sad, and he couldn't go in. And then, like, at the last minute, the guy's like busted in because you know he's rough as guts, and he's busted in. And he's like marched over and like bashed the door open. So obviously he changed his mind, and he was like, "Oh, I've got to be there." But yeah, I was just like, "Oh, even like rough druggo guy loves his dog." But that would be, it's like an ordinariness kind of story, isn't it? And like when I was watching this, I was kind of like, oh my God, this is a really good story. You know? You could take that story, couldn't you?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, but that would work really, really nicely, wouldn't it? The suffering of putting down a pet, and that everybody can relate to it, and it's that self-sacrifice. And you could kind of make it that maybe he had some scratches on his arm where he actually dove in to stop the other dog from biting it, and he got bit, which would tie into that self-sacrifice. And, the realisation would be that he doesn't want this dog to die alone, because that's the biggest fear that perhaps he has. These are all things that you could pull on. Brilliant. Okay, what else can we do? So we've got putting down a suffering pet. We've got a teen girl that's got to give up her kid. What else can we do? How else do we see that kind of love? Or not even. What about realisation? Let's pull on the idea of realisation. When do we have these kind of transformative realisations? What can you realise that changes the way that you look at your life?
For like sacrifice, could you say like a career woman having to become having to leave her job or something just to come to the care of her child?
Yeah, or not
And
even
then,
the
like,
care of a
choosing between,
child.
yeah.
Like maybe care of an elderly mother or father. Maybe somebody who quits their job because maybe their mum's got Alzheimer's.
Yeah, they have to like choose between family and...
Exactly, I love that. That's so good. Person quitting. Maybe let's make it a little bit more kind of dramatic. Their dream job, like something that they've really worked for.
I think so.
No, I'm actually great.
Yeah, so maybe they have to quit something that they've always worked towards. Maybe it's like, I don't know, what's a job that you really have to work towards? Maybe they're like a managing director of something, or like, that they've worked really hard to get into this position of leadership or this particular job, and they have to give it up because, they've found out their dad's got Parkinson's. And it's like, oh yeah, I've got to, there's no decision. It's not a decision. Or maybe they find out that their dad's got like pancreatic cancer or something, where you've got like 3 to 6 months max. And they're like, well, it's not even a choice. I have to be there. I have to go home. I have to look after my family. That's the more important thing. That would be an excellent kind of thing. And then you've got the realisation. Perfect. Okay. What else? So we could pull on realisation, or we can pull on self-sacrifice. They're the two kind of real things in that.
So a good realisation would be, if you're writing your own short story, probably easier or better to do, because self-sacrifice, you might emulate too many stories, whereas realisation is a real turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe like donating an organ to a family member.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it turns into like sawtooth. I love horror movies.
And I think giving an organ, even though it's a very dramatic thing, it is something that does happen. People do that. That is a thing. Actually, I think I was talking to somebody about. Yeah, that's right. Didn't her friend do it? Yeah, her friend, Selena Gomez's friend, gave her her kidney. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were trying to come up with stories, and we came up with something very similar. Actually, maybe it was you. I don't know who I have conversations with. I seriously don't. I cannot recall all the conversations I have in a day. But we talked about giving up an organ, and we said, oh, maybe you could have like a dad who didn't know that he was a dad. So a guy gets a phone call from an ex and is like, by the way, you have a son. He's 6. His name's Max. I don't know why Max. Why not? His name's Max. He needs a kidney. Can you pop down, chuck us a kidney? That would be a cool story, right? But we were saying the thing that you need to do to emulate Kate Kennedy is not to have the phone call. To have the hang up is when the story starts, right? So he takes the phone call, and then maybe you write from, you know, the sound of the hanging up of the phone, and then you go from there. Perhaps you write a monologue from there. That would be really cool. Or a short story, or a dialogue. He gets off the phone, and his wife turns to him and goes, "Who's that?"
That's so cold.
How do I explain that? Well, so, you know this girl that I dated before I dated you? Well, we didn't really date. We just kind of slept together a couple of times. So...
What if it wasn't before her?
Maybe it wasn't before her. Maybe they want, you know, to take a... Do you guys watch Friends? Do you guys know Friends?
Yeah.
Okay. We're on a break! We're on a break! We're on a break! Maybe they were on a break. And, oops. It's not again. You know, but like that would be an awesome story. Awesome story. That would be so cool. And I think with any of these stories, it would be really important to start them at the after. So with the teen girl giving up the baby, maybe it's after she's signed the document. You know, because you obviously have to sign forms once you decide to give up a baby. You can't just go, whoop, heads up. You have to actually sign documentation to say, I'm giving away this child, and this is who to. So maybe it's after she clicks the pen. Yeah? Or putting down the suffering pet, maybe it's once the vet leaves. Because like if you've never put down a pet, they inject them. You have to have like there's like several injections, and then obviously the breath slows, and then it stops, and then the vet kind of says, "I'll give you a couple of minutes," and leaves, so that you can like make yourself a blubbering mess. So maybe it's when the door swings. Because it's always a swinging door, because they're usually like carrying stuff. So, you know, maybe it's when the door swings. That would be a really great time to start. Or the dream job to care for a loved one. Maybe it's at that moment of handshake. You know, because obviously when you quit a job, unless like you're quitting because you're like, I quit! I don't need any of you. Then that's probably not when you shake hands. But if you quit a job nicely, you always shake hands at the end. So maybe it's after the handshake. Yeah? Or giving up an organ, like we said, when the phone hangs up. Yeah? Or maybe, you know, if it's, a brother for a sister or whatever, maybe it's, you know, when, because like, so if you're going to give up an organ, you have to do like a test to see if you are actually compatible, because you can't just take any old organ. It has to be an organ that's actually compatible with your blood type and like tissue type and I don't know, other related medical things. You know, maybe it's, you know, when you realise that you're actually compatible.
Or maybe
it's the moment that you're
says
compatible.
no, and it could be after it says no.
And you're like, but
Yeah.
rather die? You know? That would be really, really cool. So, and you could turn it into any of these. You know? Work with the form that makes you most comfortable. So if you're most comfortable in the genre of short story, then do it. But if you know you write a really crappy story, pick another one. Go for a monologue. I think monologues are probably the easiest, because really you just have to feel the character and show it, yeah? There's no description requirements. Symbolism requirements, but not description requirements, which does really, for a lot of people, tick a lot of boxes, because they're not the describers. Okay? Or a letter or an email might be better for you, because you just feel more comfortable in that kind of, I guess, more, what would you call it? More like casual tone. You know, you're more casual when you're writing a letter or an email. Yeah? We're packing. Is that time? Oh, it is time. Time butterflies when you're having fun. Questions, queries? Did this help? Go home and write something. Just a bilge draft, like she said. Just vomit something out and then give it to your teacher and get some feedback. Just even 30 minutes. Just write something and see if it worked. A vom draft? Yeah. To go, hang on, wait, ready? You're welcome.